Tank is by far the worst role in Overwatch 2, and today I'm going to talk about it. We're going to talk about how that role went from being one of the most exhilarating roles to play to now becoming one of the most awkward and boring roles to play given the gameplay style that the balance team seems to be pushing towards. Before we get into this video, there's two disclaimers that I want to make. Number one, this video is unscripted, and I tend to try my level best to simplify the problem, and so even the average player or a casual player can understand. And number two, because on the support video I had lots of comments kind of talking about this, and of course, like, I'm a smaller content creator, people don't know me. I'm a grandmaster DPS main, Genji main player, but I'm also grandmaster on support and tank, and I've been playing this game legitimately since the beta all the way up until now. So I feel like I have a good idea of what I'm talking about, but I'm always open to constructive criticism and healthy discussions within the comment section. And if you guys saw the support video, I was pretty much replying to almost everybody, unless the comment was just like a personal attack for no reason. That's not healthy discussion. Anyways, with that out of the way, we're going to talk about tank and what has happened to it. Because when Overwatch 2 kind of started, tank was really fun to play, and now going into the current state of Overwatch 2, it seems to be a little bit all over the place. So what went wrong with tank in season 1 and season 2, where it was really fun to play, and then in season 6, season 5, and well, the later end of season 4, tank began to feel stale and a little bit all over the place. Okay, so here's what happened. I'm going to try and simplify everything and not go into too much detail, and we will talk about the solutions in a lot more detail. Basically, what has happened is the name of the game, near the end of season 2 or in season 2, support players started to complain that they felt like they didn't have enough tools to kind of deal with, flankers and damage dealers and tanks and things like that, right? As a result, Blizzard started to kind of overbuff the support role, giving them a little bit too much to work with. And I think we can all share that sentiment that unless you are just a support player and you don't play anything else, you will not share this sentiment because you don't understand it from the other roles' perspective. And even if you play those other roles, you might not understand the impact that a support brings into a team fight and how much they can enable or even disable a certain play style, a character on your team, or even just what you can do in the game, right? So when Overwatch 2 came out, in season 1 and 2, tank and DPS could kind of do whatever they wanted. There was a lot of variety. We're not going to talk about like Overwatch League levels of play, because that was pretty much just a soldier and junker queen meta. But once that was kind of getting faded out, we did end up in a Winston, Diva, Zarya circle that we are kind of back at now. And yeah, and while we are in that kind of state, it is like, I kind of feel like tank players in general, even in the casual scene, have gotten good enough to where even if somebody's playing your counter, you can just play around that counter pick and do better. Unless it's like a hard counter case, like for example, Orisa into Ryan, right? Like, it's just extremely difficult to play Ryan in that case. But that's besides the point. The point here is that when supports got over-kitted with so much powerful abilities and things like that, it became harder and harder every patch for tank to be able to make a difference within a team fight. Now, as we kind of went along the patches, we saw that damage numbers on the DPS role, characters that took skill, got made rather clunky, weaker, and their overall numbers kind of went down. Damage dealers that were a lot more easier to play and less popular in the community, because for some strange reason that Alec Dawson's balance team believes that hero popularity represents hero viability, they started to buff up characters like Symmetra, Torbjorn, Junkrat, and things like, and May and Bastion, right? And the thing is when you have characters that can find such free value for just holding a button, with Bastion, with May, with Junkrat in lower levels of play, Symmetra and Torbjorn, where it's less about interacting with the opponent and more about just, if I just kind of do this long enough, I'm going to get free value. Then unfortunately that case began to come to life. Torbjorn got a massive fire rate buff. He's a machine gun. Once you press E, and his overload starts just overloading you with these like molten lava rocks into your face. Symmetra got a change where she can, like, against barrier tanks, she can actually steal, she can life steal from it and keep herself alive, give herself some self-sustain. Throw in a Mercy Pocket, a Zenyatta Orb, or an Iliari Pylon healing her, and you have a very tough to kill, 140, 120 damage beam Symmetra. May actually got her freeze back, and she's been getting a lot of different quality of life and even damage number increases. Junkrat is Junkrat. He did get nerfed a little bit here and there, but his trap is able to hold you in place again, and that's not good for certain tanks like Wrecking Ball, Winston, and even sometimes Orisa or Reinhardt can run into them if you're not prepared, maybe even a Doomfist. So it feels like the problem with Tank was that we kind of started to go back in time in what we didn't enjoy in this game. The things that we don't enjoy in this game, it doesn't matter whether it's hard or soft. CC is not something that anybody enjoys in Overwatch. Overwatch promotes a fast-paced gameplay, and it should always promote a fast-paced gameplay. Trying to forcefully slow it down has always proven time and time again in Overwatch 1 that it was never the solution, right? And as a result, in my personal opinion, whenever the game slowed down, Tank is the role that didn't enjoy it the most, because they spent more time just kind of standing around than actually going in and making plays, right? And we're seeing that now too, is that with Tank, especially with the Orisa meta, I know that the meta is kind of fading away and the Zarya meta is kind of entering with the, the big circle of Winston, Diva, Zarya kind of entering back in and Orisa kind of fading out. The problem with the Orisa meta was that it legit just felt like Double Shield again, where nothing dies, or either one team runs out of resources and they get blown up. And that's pretty much what we're seeing right now. But then an argument is made that, well, there's too much damage in the game. Yes, exactly, you're right. There is too much damage in the game, but I'm going to raise a very powerful argument that's going to be a hot take that not a lot of people are going to like hearing. And the problem with damage in the game is that there's too much damage in the game in the tank role and in the support role, and there's not enough damage in the DPS role. And that's why we're seeing a damage creep. We're seeing a power creep happen in front of our very eyes. Junker Queen got a Jagged Blade buff, which she did not need at all, but that is happening. The damage creep and the damage roll is also happening because of one reason alone, and this is the main problem with the game right now. That is the reason why Tank feels bad. Even if people want to fundamentally disagree, it is a big contributing factor, and that is the healing in this game is really high. Now, the problem is not when you pick characters like Lucio, Mercy, Zen in one team comp, right? Or when you bundle together one quote-unquote main healer with one quote-unquote off healer, where one support character does high healing, one support character does low healing. The problem is that the newer supports in Kiriko, in 𝐒𝐿𝐼, even some of the reworks to Baptiste, Ana, Brigitte, Lifeweaver, Moira, these 7 characters, excluding Mercy, Lucio, and Zen is a slightly different topic because of Discord Orb, but Zen is, in my opinion, is fair because he's technically quote-unquote a glass cannon, right? Because he has no mobility. Once he kind of gets dived upon, once he kind of gets cornered, it's over for him, right? So Zen has his weaknesses, Lucio has his weaknesses, Mercy has his weaknesses, but the way that they've treated Moira, Lifeweaver, Kiriko, 𝐒𝐿𝐼, Brigitte, Bap, and Ana, it was almost as if they looked at these 7 support characters, and they're all very popular characters, right? And they were like, okay, well, what if we can just kind of strip the weaknesses from this role and kind of just give them more and more and more? And there was a great comment in the support video that somebody basically said that it really hit the nail in the coffin that I feel like is the problem with the support role. Support role's biggest problem is that the support players actually want to be damage dealing players, right? They're basically crying about the fact that, well, I can't fight back. And even though an argument could be made is that you could fight back, the problem was with that support players were the ones impacted by 5v5 the most, because they didn't understand like how to play without that 6th body on their team, especially a second tank that could peel for them. So they kind of had to adapt to the way that tank and damage roll had by playing corners and not just standing in main and heal botting, right? They actually had to do their job too, which was shoot back. The problem is that the reworks that came into their kits actually enabled them to do the best of everything. For example, Baptiste is a meta-defining support for the Orisa comps, right? And what that basically means is when you look at, I know he got nerfed a little bit here. It's honestly a slap on the wrist. It's really not felt that much. But the problem is that Baptiste could basically do like 100 burst healing with just a button press, right? And then his right click is AoE healing. His left click is high damage burst rifle, and at close ranges, it's really good. And then you have immortality field, and then you have a damage amplification matrix that is insane, that Baptiste can just use for himself, and he can pump out even higher healing from that. Not a lot of bad players do it, but I do, and it's honestly really underrated because you can keep people alive through so much when you use amp matrix to amplify your own heals, and you just shoot your right clicks through it, right? Like the healing grenades. Brigitte as well got her, she basically became Ghost Brigitte in her ultimate. Like when her ult comes up, it's pretty much like lockdown. Lifeweaver, his tree of life ult basically turns everybody into a tank. It gives everybody like an extra 100, 200 over health. And now the DPS on your team have become mini tanks. And, 𝐒𝐿𝐼 on the other hand, like she basically places a third body onto the field that if you don't deal with it, it's going to like, there's going to be a lot of passive pressure from the perspective that, hey, let's say your DPS and their DPS or your tank and their tank are locked into a 1v1 or a 2v1 or whatever the case might be. But that extra body, the extra healing combined with the 𝐒𝐿𝐼 healing, 120 healing per second, by the way, that's so much numbers being pumped out that you are forced to buff damage over time. And then, like, yeah, even if the damage role begins to see damage numbers go up and they don't deal with the support role and their healing numbers and everything, the biggest sufferer from this is tank, right? And of course tank will see some number increases too. We're seeing it in Junker Queen, we're seeing it in some quality of life stuff with Zarya, we're seeing it like here and there with Doomfist getting his cooldowns reduced and things like that. Although that their argument was that it was supposed to help Doomfist survive more, my argument with that is actually allows Doomfist to increase his sustained damage over time, with the way Doomfist players use it nowadays. So what we're seeing as a result of high healing in the game is everything else has to become higher too. And my proposed solution is this: if we want to bring the tank role into a good spot, ignoring the rock paper scissors part of it, if we want to make tank feel good to play again, we have to understand some critical components, right? Number one, that supports are supposed to have a weakness that they can be punished at, right? I'm not saying that they shouldn't be allowed to do decent amount of heals or a decent amount of damage, right? But there should be a weakness that, okay, this is where this support kind of drops off. For example, when I look at Lucio, Mercy, and Zen, this is what I think, right? Zenyatta can do high damage, but his healing, when he puts out a healing orb, that's where it kind of drops off, right? His strength is in his ability to do great poke damage and apply Discord Orb, right? And now they've actually dealt with Discord Orb in a really clever way with how you can break the line of sight and just play corners and then, you know, dive the Zen or whatever the case might be. So Discord Orb doesn't necessarily feel as bad anymore, but it does still feel bad to play against whenever it does work, right? So that's a slightly different problem. And for Zenyatta, I have a different solution, which I won't discuss in this video. I actually kind of talked about it in the support video, if you're interested, if I remember correctly. If not, then we'll talk about like how to fix broken abilities in Overwatch in a future video. The next thing I would like to see is when you look at Zen, you look at Lucio, and it's like Lucio can kind of do a little bit of everything, but he doesn't actually excel at anything. So he's the jack of all trades. So he can do decent damage, he can do low AoE healing, right? But his strength comes from his movement and his ultimate, which can be used to engage or disengage or also counter other aggressive ultimates and things like that, right? I also look at Mercy the same way, where Mercy's skill expression is her movement. She can only really, like, you know, she's like a pocket support. She can only really like bring in good heals to one person, and she kind of wants to enable your DPS and leave your tank and other support behind, more often than not, at least. And the point here is that these characters were a lot more one-dimensional in the sense that, hey, this is their one job. This is kind of what they do, and that's it. And you pick them accordingly, right? Then when we kind of moved over to Ana was the one that was, again, still limited to single target, but some of the stuff in her ability kit became a little bit sillier, right? Like, for example, in a 5v5 setting, Anti is such a free team fight when it's crazy, and it's on a low cooldown. It's like 10, 12, 11 seconds. It doesn't matter. The point is, you will have it, you need it for that one Anti on a tank, and the whole team fight shifts. And then it forces your team that, hey, please play Kiriko, or please you as a tank play Zarya. And if you don't, you're just going to get rolled over, right? Like, you're forced to like play into the cards of support abilities because they're so strong. Baptiste with Immortality Field, do I really need to explain why that's so strong? And well, Baptiste's whole kit is so strong, right? Brigitte's ability to just, when she goes into her rally and things like that, like a lot of that problem of why tank in specific are struggling to play the game right now, right, from just a basic perspective, is because supports have really strong abilities that can enable or disable their engages, right? Or force them to just, okay, well, your first engage as a tank should be about forcing cooldowns. And then after that, you can make a play. But if you are unable to make a play in that second engagement, well, then you lose the team fight because now their cooldowns came back and you get blown up immediately, right? And that's kind of the loop that we are in. And my solution is that we need to look at kind of nerfing the support role. We shouldn't have to damage creep DPS and tank, right? And then if that's not the route that they want to go down, that the abilities kind of get dealt with, right? My argument is that lower the damage overall in tank and support. Let's play into their factors that, well, tank should be about tanking and then dealing some damage or pressure to create space, and support should always be about enabling. Now, while they can do that really well, they shouldn't also be able to have, like, for example, if I look at Zen, now look at Bap, both of them are kind of like, the way they do damage is poke damage, right? But Zenyatta's drop-off is like his healing numbers are low and he's immobile, right? Well, Baptiste has Immortality Field. Baptiste can also has high mobility that a smart Bap can just always avoid you. And he has high damage. He can outduel you. And there was a quote that I saw in a stream, on a live stream, that somebody basically said, like, the problem with supports right now, majority of the supports, not Lucio, Mercy, and Zen, right, Majority of these like Moira, Kiriko, Life Fever, Iliari, Brigitte is slightly debatable, BAP and Ana supports. The problem with them is like you basically have to kill them 2 to 3 times because of how many abilities they have that can kind of either keep them alive or bring their HP bar back up. So it's like, oh, I engage this Ana, I'm about to kill her. Well, she healed herself, and now I have to restart that process. And in that process, she can basically, destroy me in a duel and things like that. I'm not saying that we need to completely like kill the support role. I play support myself, and these days I'm playing support more than anything. But I do think that there are some support abilities that we could kind of rework in how they work. For example, Ana specifically, I think Ana, the time has finally come for anti-nade as a concept to go away, right? And what I mean by this is instead of anti shutting down the healing completely, I would much prefer that anti-nade, it can do a little bit more damage as a compensation, but I would want it to reduce healing by, let's say, 80% or 50% or for just 2 seconds or something like that, right? I don't want it to go down this direction that, no, if I throw this nade or whatever the case might be, I deserve to just fully win that team fight, right? It's a little bit silly, especially like, for example, if you're playing Junker Queen or Doomfist or Orisa or especially Roadhog, right? If you're playing these tanks and they walk up to an Ana and they get anti, it's pretty much GG's for those tanks, right? Because at that point, the Ana is in a position where her team is there, and you as a tank, you're like, oh, what the hell am I supposed to do now? And if your team didn't push in or get some elims in that fight, it's kind of over for you. Like, there's not much you can do about that one button press, and that's kind of becoming a problem, right? Now let's move on to the damage roll. What is the problem with the damage roll when it comes to the tank roll interacting with it? This is the harshest reality that I want to talk about, and I'm going to talk about this more in the damage video that will come after this tomorrow, right? Easy to play damage dealing heroes or cheesy damage dealing heroes, or the way that they function, should never, ever, ever, ever be allowed to be viable. They should be niche picks that excel at lower levels of play, at casual levels of play. Sometimes they can catch your enemy off guard, but they should never be pushed into a point where they are viable. Torbjorn, Symmetra, Sombra, Junkrat, Mei, and Bastion. These are big outliers in the DPS role where, comparatively to what their counterparts in the other damage dealers have to do, their gimmicks are too overwhelming for support and tank, right? Again, I'm trying my level best to be as unbiased as possible and think about the game as a whole rather than just one role and my mains, right? So Torb, Sim, Sombra, Junkrat, Mei, and Bastion. These characters are not only cheesy to play, nobody enjoys to play them enjoys to play against them, but most importantly, tank as a role doesn't enjoy to play against them, right? Junkrat and Bastion, Torbjorn, they bring in so much spam damage that playing tank feels like a nightmare, that if I just blink in the wrong direction, if I just walk in the wrong direction, I will get blown up immediately, or I will feed so much ult charge and my team is going to flame me that I'm just throwing the game, right? Then you also look at the state of like somebody like Sombra, right? Sombra can hack and perma invis. Guys, it's the most silliest thing. Like, your tank, it doesn't matter what your tank is, right? And they're walking into a team fight, you're walking into a team fight, you're an Invis Sombra, right? You don't even have to watch Sombra at the highest levels of play. Even at the casual level of play, I see this in quick play, I see this in competitive, I see this even in the arcade all the time, that the Sombra is in perma Invis, she gets behind the enemy tank, she hacks that tank, she signals to her tank to walk in, and that tank just gets deleted. Even if the hack is 1 second long, 1 second is a lot of time in Overwatch, right? 1 second is a lot of time in Overwatch. That's a lot of time for a lot of burst damage and cooldowns to be thrown at that tank to just be deleted. For example, you're a Reinhardt, right? You're playing Reinhardt. You love playing Reinhardt. Reinhardt's an honest character. He's an honest tank hero. Everybody loves Reinhardt. He walks into a team fight. In front of you is a Junker Queen or a Ramatra or whatever. And you're like, okay, I can outplay Junker Queen or Ramatra if I'm just smart with my shield dancing and my positioning and, all this type of stuff. Like, I can bait out Junker Queen's commanding shout cooldown, kind of shield buff for a little bit, wait with my team, and once her commanding shout is gone, I can just walk in, right? Or Ramatra, I can just kind of, play it smart, play like, avoid his punches and things like that can engage him. And even the same can be applied to Reinhardt into Zarya, right? Like, the Zarya, I can force out the bubbles, wait it out, and then just walk in on the Zarya because now she's naked and now she doesn't have anything to do. Therefore, I can just hammer her down. That sounds extremely weird out of context, but you guys know what I mean, right? That sounds really weird. So then the problem becomes is when you put in a character like Sombra, what does she do? Like, she gets behind the Reinhardt, she takes away his ability to do anything, and that other tank just instantly wins the game, right? Instantly walks in, all the momentum's gone. That tank, the Rein player, now begins to tilt. It becomes very frustrating, right? Mei comes into the play. Mei is basically she's always been like a tank-ish character, right? In her ability to just deny space and the crowd control she brings. Now you're playing Mei, you're playing Ramatra, you walk up to that Reinhardt, you walk up to a Winston, you walk up to a Roadhog, you walk up to a Diva, a Doomfist, a Junker Queen. What are they going to do about it, right? Pair that together with a Reaper or a Sombra or just even a Bastion. Like, what are you supposed to do about it on tank? And that's what feels frustrating, right? So my argument, and I can make so many arguments about like these particular characters in the damage role, right? Bastion, Junkrat, Mei, Sim, Torb, and Sombra. I understand if you're a fan of their character design. I understand if you like playing them and all that type of stuff, right? But you must understand, if you are a fan of these characters, that these characters in a shooter game, in this weird hybrid shooter game, they are not healthy for the game. They are not healthy for the game. Symmetra promotes a very odd style of game, but she's never been meta, and Symmetra is at least, like, you can deal with Symmetra, right? But a good Torb, a good Sombra, a good Junkrat, a good Mei, a good Bastion, once they kind of know how to play the game, they know what they're doing, the life of you as a tank and support feels incredibly frustrating to play because of just their cheesy design of, well, I can just burst you down, or I can just deny your ability to play the game, and you're just not going to have fun, right? Like, Mei and Sombra are all about making sure that you don't get to play the game, right? Torb and Junkrat and Bastion are all about bursting you down so fast on tank that you just can't do anything, right? And that puts more pressure on your damage dealers to deal with them, or some of your support players to off angle and deal with them if possible before you as a tank can do anything. And therefore it strips the agency from the tank role to be able to do anything, right? So this is like where I'm gonna, like, shut the video down and everything. But in my personal opinion, there's two ways that we can try to make some of these things better, right? On the damage roll side of things and their interaction with tank, characters like Bastion, Junkrat, Mei, Sombra, Sim, and Torb. Sim is a little bit of a weird case. You could kind of rework Sim and she's okay, because it's really not that difficult to deal with her. And like, in the grand scheme of things, like, so I might just exclude Sim a little bit, but she can get cheesy. Like, if the game state favors Symmetra, she can get really oppressive on the maps that she's good on. King of the Hill especially, right? Even in this new game mode, what's this new game mode called? The Flashpoint. She's really, really strong over there too, right? But Sim is a bit of a middle ground. But Torb, Sombra, Mei, Junkrat, Bastion, these are characters that we just, unless they get reworked into becoming healthier to play against, we cannot have them be extremely viable, or just characters that, hey, if I pick this character, like, I'm not soft throwing. It should always be the case that these characters, at least in Diamond Plus or High Plat Plus, these characters should be easier to deal with characters that require a significant amount of skill that can outplay them, right? Like, because at the moment we have a lot of players that are just picking these Bastions, picking these Torbjorns, sitting AFK and climbing the ranks, and it's happening. And once these metas will go away, once these Bastions and Torbs will start to get nerfed, they can't play anything, and they're going to ruin games at higher levels of play. They can even ruin the games from going from silver to plat, because they won't know how to play anything that requires active skill investment, right? And that's exactly why we should, like, we should always try to have the higher skill heroes like Echo, Genji, Tracer, Hanzo to a certain extent, Pharah, Ashe, Soldier 76, Sojourn. These should, and Reaper, I suppose, he's like, it's not like Reaper's that challenging to play, but playing Reaper well in 5v5 can be difficult sometimes. So, because of supports. So, relying on this cast of DPS and not on Bastion, Junkrat, Mei, Sim, and Torb, and Sombra, I would much prefer those people to be viable, because they're just healthier to play against than just, well, I look down a choke, I spam, and now you as a tank can't play the game because you're feeding, or you're just, you're throwing the game because now I have my ult in 30 seconds and I blow your team up with a Riptire, or I just lava all over the place, or I throw a giant wall up, or Bastion just gets his ultimate every like 40 seconds. It's unbelievable, right? So that is my solution, is it's either we do a little bit of both, or we hardcore focus on damage or support, where we rework some abilities on the support side of things to feel healthy to play, not because of the way it interacts with DPS. It actually hurts the tank role more than anything. People don't realize that a lot of the big buffs that support got, it hurt tank more than it hurt what it was supposed to do with their interactions with DPS. And that's the harsh reality of it, right? If you can disagree against that statement, by all means, leave a respectful comment down below and let's discuss, right? But the way I see it, playing at my level, playing with my friends in quick play and on alternate accounts and seeing what it is like in lower levels of play, I've been noticing this pattern that I understand that Blizzard's intentions when they buffed some of the things on support was so that it would feel better against damage dealers, but it actually ended up shutting down the tank role more and more, right? So we have to find a good middle ground where some of these game-changing abilities in Immortality Field and Anti-Nade, like instead of Immortality, it could reduce the damage by 90%. Instead of shutting down healing, it could reduce the healing by 90%. These would be much more healthier alternatives because you could still get some numbers out of the characters behind them, right? And you could buff up each individual tank's ability to, well, the role is called tank. They should be good at tanking, right? You could buff up maybe like Ryan's shield numbers. You could maybe give Winston a little bit more survivability. Give them armor here and there. Give them blue shields that regen over time. So there's ways to approach the situation, but the solution is never going to be damage creep. Damage creep happening will force another healing creep to happen, and then healing creep happening will force another damage creep to happen, and we can't go in this loop. We are in the GOATs problem again, and we're in the double shield problem again, where strong abilities, where support being the strongest one in the game because it's overkitted and things like that. We need to address these problems first and foremost if we want tank, DPS, and support, the whole game as a whole, to feel better and healthier to play. The current state of the game, while it's getting a little bit better because Orisa is kind of being phased out, Bastion and Torb are still around, right? And because Bastion and Torb kind of like come around, you're kind of forced onto Orisa again. Like, yeah, you can try to play some other tanks and outpace them, but in the longer, grander scale of games, Bastion and Torb can really take over. Mei can really take over when she's paired with a good brawl tank, or even in Orisa. If the Mei and Orisa are in good coordination, they can do some crazy things. I was in a lobby just yesterday where, my goodness, I was watching what was happening to our tank, and I just felt bad for the guy. He was depressed in voice. He was like, bro, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't know what to do. And the resource investment for you to deal with that Mei, Orisa, and whatever's with them and behind them, it's so much higher than what it takes for the Mei and Orisa to just press a few buttons and win the game, right? That's kind of why we should always strive to have the higher skill heroes, you know, like define the game than the lower skill ones, right? That's just my opinion though. I'd love to hear yours down in the comment section below. Please do your level best to keep it civil and respectful and have a good discussion below. And if you want to support the channel for free, just hit the like button and subscribe. It helps with the algorithm. It means a lot. And I'm going to be doing a battle pass giveaway soon. So if you're interested, hitting like and subscribe will increase your chances because I can track that type of stuff. Anyways, with that being said, I will see you in the next video where we will talk about damage roll and the problems with it right now.